Thank you. And I'd like to welcome everybody to Vale Cabinet District Council's Cabinet meeting on today, the 30th of the 5th, 30th of May 2025. We're here at Abbey House for our Cabinet meeting this morning. And if we could go through, well, first of all, I think you have an announcement about the fire exit. Is that correct?
Yeah, so just to let everyone know today that if anything happens today, there's nothing planned, but our exit would change and I would lead everyone through to the front doors here. And when we just congregate over in the area here.
Okay. For information, I am Councillor Bethia Thomas and I'll be chairing the meeting today. Do we have any apologies for absence?
We've had no apologies. Yeah.
And do we need to do a roll call of everybody?
Yeah, okay. So in the room we have Councillor Andy Forsham, Helen Pighills, Bethia Thomas, Mark Coleman, Emily Smith, Neil Fawcett and Hayley Gascoigne. And we also have Councillor Andy Crawford joining us online.
Thank you. So we're going through the minutes of the previous meeting. So that was held on the 11th of April. So for everybody who was present at that meeting, have you had a chance to read through the minutes, and would you be happy to agree them as an accurate record?
Process.
Yes. Beckenbell, thank you. Councillor Fulsham, all agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Now to go on to declaration of interest. Item number 4. Do we have any declarations of interest that we need to speak of? No. Thank you very much. So 5, urgent business. Is there any urgent business? No. Decided to a little glitch. Apologies. And there's no public participation.
Nobody.
Thank you. So we can go straight on to the main order of business. So that's item number 7, culture, heritage and creative industry strategy, introduced by Councillor Pighills.
Yeah. But my voice will hold out. So this report presents the phase 2 action plan for the Beacon, building upon the initial progress which was reported to Cabinet in April of this year. It also presents a pathway to deliver a draft culture, heritage and creative strategy of which the Beacon will be part. This will be brought back to Cabinet following wider consultation in 2026. The first phase action plan for the Beacon, adopted in February 2024, laid the groundwork for improvements, and this next phase addresses outstanding actions while introducing a comprehensive set of new initiatives. These new actions primarily focus on the operational delivery of services at the Beacon, including capital investment, targeted service reviews and operational adjustments to enhance service provision moving forward. A key consideration in this plan's development has been the views and ideas of council members gathered through recent discussions. These discussions revealed strong support for the venue, recognising its dual role as an entertainment venue aiming to be more commercial, and many comments seeing the venue as a valuable public service for education and training, social and health and wellbeing outcomes. To balance these viewpoints, the action plan employs a balanced scorecard approach. This incorporates not only commercial measures such as financial information, but also qualitative metrics, including user satisfaction, innovation and effective operational management. This holistic approach is better suited to a public service model and will allow us to track outcomes more effectively. The report also introduces the pathway to a culture, heritage and creative industry strategy for 2026 to 2030. The proposed strategy would engage with local, regional and national partners, including Arts Council England and the National Lottery Heritage Fund, to align aims and objectives with local needs and open up access to relevant funding schemes. It will promote a sector-led approach to encourage sustainable and strong collaborative partnerships across public, private and voluntary sectors. This would promote community engagement with arts and culture across the whole district and not just the area closest to the Beacon. It is important to recognise that this is the start of the process and we will need to be flexible as we develop the strategy, and it may require more than one action plan. The intention is to work with the County Council, including the museum's heritage and library services into the overarching strategic vision. This collaboration will broaden the scope and ambition of the Council's agenda for the sector, better positioning our services to engage with national agencies and prepare for the upcoming LGR. Sorry. It's also important to note that having broadly coterminous timelines with regional and national strategies will assist in demonstrating current relevance to our communities, which translates into future planning and funding streams. For example, Arts Council Let's Create, National Knowledge Heritage Fund, and the West Berkshire Culture Strategy, all which end around about 2030. These could all form part of our consideration when developing our strategy and reviewing the timetable for the future. The report recommends the adoption of both Phase 2 Action Plan for the Beacon and the pathway for developing this new strategy over the coming year. The new Culture, Heritage and Creative Industry Strategy will have its own dedicated action plan, and it is expected there will be a smooth transition from our Phase 2 plan into this new strategic action plan in 2026. Our role will evolve to one of strategic leadership and enablement, with delivery undertaken in partnership with public, private and voluntary sectors. The recommendations to Cabinet are given in the report, and I do hope you'll be able to support these. So in case you have any questions I can't answer, we have Adriana Partridge online, Phil Baker as Head of Communities and Arts Manager, and Daniel Harrison, who are all online.
Thank you, girls. First, may I say to officers that I would like to thank them for the work they've done in preparing this report. I also wanted to ask a question, if I may jump the gun. You were talking about involvement in shaping the strategy, and you mentioned County Council and various other organisations, but I was really wanting to understand how members would be involved in shaping the strategy as it goes forward.
I think through the normal process of I mean, there will be consultation phases to it, obviously, and as portfolio holder, I will be involved. And yeah,
I just wanted to make sure that that was being brought out as much as possible.
I mean, it's the same as with any council strategy. We have a member involvement and consultation phase, portfolio holder. Sort of that.
Thank you. Throw it open to other questions. Councillor Fawcett.
First of all, just for note, some elements of this come within my portfolio at County Council. I don't think that's at a level that gives me any conflict of interest, but just want to get noting. I have a question on the Beacon and a separate one on the strategy. On the Beacon, my question really is around. I'll start by saying my sense is that our team have done a really good job so far in what they've done with the Beacon. Clearly increased audience numbers. Every time I go in the place now, it has a better feel to it, and I think a lot of credit is deserved for that. I think there's probably quite a big challenge in how you open out to be more of a district-wide art centre. And I guess my question is really about how are we going to make sure that we shift from having the current stakeholders that are actively involved primarily in the local Wantage Grove area. How are we planning to make sure that we shift to that being a genuinely district-wide group of stakeholders, which I think will be a necessary step to making sure that it does become more of a district-wide centre.
Are you thinking in terms of the sort of, at the moment we have a core community group which looks at it very locally, and there is a plan to set up a more cultural forum which will bring in more people across, from across the district. Is that
will that be the whole district?
I would hope so, yeah. Or particularly in terms of the sectors.
Can I ask officers?
Yeah, I think it would be useful to have Phil's
would any officers be able to
come
in on that one? Hello, Phil.
Hello. Yeah, I think the answer to this one is that when we've looked at the programme, a lot of the programme relies on venue bookings, and there was a small amount of programming. The programming of the centre will take there'll be more of that as we go forward, and the programming will be on a local basis, on a slightly larger basis, on a district-wide basis. So the different kind of programs will attract people from different parts of the district in terms of big events. Obviously, the catchment area is much wider, and therefore you'll get this greater emphasis on the programming from local to district-wide, and that will help with that. But also, as we bring forward the strategy, there will be engagement with the sector, and there'll be meetings held at that there. So it will become a place where people go regularly if they're from the sector, because we'll be hosting these gets-togethers at different places across the district, but also at that centre. So there'll be more relationship between the cultural sector and the building, and there'll be more relationship with the community and the audience base as we develop the programme out.
Thank you.
I didn't understand. There's a lot of words, but I don't think I actually answered the question, which was about what's the structure to make sure that it develops as a more district-wide base for the arts. And that isn't, you don't achieve that by getting stakeholders to visit the building more often. You do it by having a programme that's designed to attract people from a much wider area, and that needs input from the stakeholders.
Yeah. Is that
I may have not used the right words, but that's what I thought I said about developing the programme and engaging with the sector as well.
I think things like, and I got this wrong last time. Is it Taylor Swift?
Yes.
So I got it right this time. I think if we can get those sort of large events, the Bright Pearls, big gigs, I guess, that will then make people feel it's worth travelling. Like me in Farringdon, if there's something that I see as being worthwhile to travel to, then I'll go. Well, I wouldn't do that, but I know people who do, who did. In fact. So I think that it's that increase in the attractiveness of what's put on, and we have, because we own the building, we need to maximise the opportunities for it. So I would be disappointed if we didn't have those sort of larger size events that would be more attractive to people and make it worthwhile travelling to. I don't think we're ever going to compete with the new theatre, for example, in Oxford, but we can certainly get more footfall into that, I would imagine, by having the right events.
Can I ask you what you would suggest and what you would think is a framework?
Well, I mean, it's a genuine don't know on my part.
No, but I would like you to come up with what you might think.
At the very minimum, I would want to see a stakeholder group that genuinely represented
all of
the whole of the Vale and all of the different cultural sectors across the Vale.
Yeah.
Whereas at the moment, and I think this is quite reasonable for the first step, which was basically to get the place back up and running, have more of a focus on local stakeholders and get more room bookings and all the rest of it. That's been successful, but it's then another step up to being genuinely district-wide.
On
the point about the more popular events, I mean, we have to run more events that attract more people. I don't know if we can monitor postcodes or addresses where people come from. My guess it would be that the vast majority of people who went to what I'm sure was an excellent Swiftie tribute probably came from Wantage and Grove, and then a slightly smaller number from the areas around Wantage and Grove. And I know there was a few from Abingdon, but probably not very many from Abingdon and Botley. So that isn't a model. It is a model for making the beacon more successful.
Yeah.
It isn't a model for making it a genuinely sort of district-wide base. Because also, you mentioned, ultimately, if you live in Botley, you are more likely, at least as likely to enter New Theatre as you are travel to Wantage.
It's cheaper and it's more financially accessible, I would say.
So it's more a question of how are we structuring the next phase to make sure that we maximise the chances of genuine buy-in across the district.
And given the block of Botley Road that's still happening, it's geographically easier probably to get to Wantage.
But I think what you suggest to me sounds like the right thing. So we've got the focus group as it is, but then that things is what Phil's saying with the stakeholders. I don't really understand necessarily who the stakeholders are, but I'm not in the entertainment and culture world. But we need to make sure that we do have the right people there to draw those. But and what I would say is, I think with Phil and Daniel now, you know, we have people who have had experience in this, and I don't want to be overly critical of the people that run it in the past, but I think we've got people now
Specialists,
I mean they were recruited specifically to draw on this.
And we couldn't have had anything as good a quality as this report because we didn't, not any criticism of the predecessors, we didn't employ people specifically with those skills.
I think there's one thing about talking about the community, you know, the community group, is we have kept it small until we know what it needs. So you've got to start by.
Can I just say, I mean, I think I had a conversation with Phil yesterday, and to get my head around the main of what we're trying to achieve. And by this strategy, we've kept it small initially, and we've reached the level that we can with the current action plan and what all the quick wins that have improved the beacon over time. Now with this strategy and taking people from across the district, like has been suggested, and advertising it more broadly, so it can target places like Abingdon and Botley and Farringdon, to be fair. A few people went from Farringdon, but that could be more if it was advertised more widely and stakeholders from those towns were engaged. So I think that's what the strategy is there to do. So we've reached where we can go, and now with this strategy and the impetus behind it, we can go and we can say, okay, we can engage across the district. And that's why my question of, I hope that there will be sufficient member input on this, because that is a great way of inputting right across the district. So that for me is the key, that we engage the right people, as you say, but we also engage members and get their opinions on this as we go forward. Does that make
sense? It makes an amount of sense.
An amount of sense. Thank you. You're so complimentary.
Because that'll tie with my second question. So.
Yes, I know. Would you like to go?
Yeah. So and this is where it picks up on what you just said, because there's the Beacon Action Plan, and my understanding is we've done phase 1, we're going into phase 2, and then there is this district-wide culture, heritage, arts strategy. And in my mind, those are two quite different things. I know there is a link between them because clearly the Beacon is going to be an element of that. What worries me in the report about the section about this strategy is that it seems to start from with a sort of preemptive decision that the Beacon is going to be a major part of that strategy, which seems to me to be subjective. If we are setting out to objectively set up a culture, heritage, arts strategy for the district, I would have thought the starting point would be pretty much a blank sheet. We've got a lot of this is in the report, it's all stakeholders on, and the Beacon may or may not end up having a major role delivering the strategy, because it may be that we end up with a strategy that says actually we can find ways to get lots more people from across the whole district to go and do things at the Beacon. But equally, we may say actually the best way to deliver culture, heritage, arts across the Vale is a much more dispersed approach, building on all the different assets there are across the district, regardless of whether it happens to be a building owned by the Vale or councils or whatever. And reading the report, it seemed to me there was almost some decision that had already been made.
From my point of view, if I may, it's sort of like we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know when it's going to happen in terms of local government reorganisation. It could be that there's 3 options, and there's probably infinite permutations of those options, because we cannot say what the government will choose. We cannot say what the government timetables will be. So I am content, I think, with this strategy. It may make the assumption that the Beacon is central to this, or at least part of it. But we have this as an asset, and I would like to protect this as an asset for the time being, as a cultural and arts centre for the district, developing that as we go along. However, making sure that we have it to hand over to whatever comes next. And then that point, whatever comes next, might be able to say, well, what they might want to do with it. And I think that that would be dependent on the outcome of the council that we end up being in. If it was just, I mean, if it happened to be like a Southern Vale unitary, then I could see that probably, not that that's on the table, but hypothetically, we would be looking at our cultural centres in a different way to it being a county-wide unitary. And I think that's really important that we just have that in our mind as we make this decision today. So that process is important to overlay on top of the strategy that we're coming up with.
That I completely agree with, and I think there's a real strength that we're working with the county council on it, because whatever the boundaries are, the new council, assuming the government gets that far,
yes,
will then own the Beacon and the Cornerstone, but it will also own all the libraries across both districts. And actually that opens up huge
museums
potential to do more stuff in more places. So absolutely positive about that. My worry is the report reads as if we've already decided that the Beacon is going to be a major, I can't remember the exact words, but a major hub or a major plank of the strategy. It just seems to me that was preemptive. Undoubtedly, it will be part of the strategy.
yeah.
But I can't, again, given what you said, I would say it's unlikely that the Beacon, given where it is geographically, is going to be a primary base for activity across the whole of whatever the new council is. It might be for quite an area, and that's a good thing. But that was my worry, that it's looked like we've preempted what could be quite a key decision.
Councillor Coleman?
Yeah. So I think I would, and we talked about that perhaps this really ought to have been two separate reports, but we are where we are, and given the time that we've got, we don't have the benefits to separate it out. But for the minutes that we've just actually approved, I'll just read the paragraph. The key points raised include the importance of continuing progress and building on the success achieved so far. This is all about the Beacon. Cabinet also reflected on the vision for the Beacon, emphasising its role as an arts centre for the whole district. So I think conceptually we think that's the way to. What I would now say, break, that is the Beacon. Break. Now let's look at what we're talking about, which is the pathway to a strategy. It isn't the strategy. And I think we should say on all of these things,
yes,
a bit. Andy Crawford, correct me if I picked out the wrong thing here, but I'm going to say we will put things into the budget because we think that's a good thing to do. We will want to be able to spend the money if we need to. However, that doesn't commit us to having to spend that money.
Yeah.
And I think this here, if we make reference to various things in what that we think will be in the strategy, it doesn't commit us to having to do that later on if there's a better route. So I think this isn't the strategy. It's an agreement that we need a strategy, and how we're going to go on that route comes to, I think, the point that Bethia said about how do we ensure that we have that engagement, continued engagement. So I think when I first read this, I probably was guilty of reading it as the strategy, and signing up to this was like, okay, we're now going to definitely spend the money on these things specifically. What this actually is doing is saying we have the ability to do that within the budget we have available, but if at the end of the day we think there's a better way of doing it, then we can veer and adjust. But without if we were asked to note this second bit, really, we can't progress that.
Councillor Bolton.
Thank you. Diving a little further into this pathway to the strategy, it was mentioned in the introduction that it will go out for consultation, as it would with any policy. What I'd like to be assured of is that it will actually be quite a wide consultation. It won't be narrowly focused, because We don't want to close down any avenues that we might not yet be aware of. And if we do a wide-ranging consultation on it, we can actually pick out more stuff that we might miss out on otherwise.
Thank you. Anybody, did you have any comments that you wanted to?
No, I think you've covered things, and I think, yeah, in terms of consultation, it would be a public consultation, shouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The points I was going to say about the whole community group.
Yeah.
That obviously we started that deliberately limited because it's easier to ask people than to say, no, we don't want you in our gang anymore.
But yeah, I mean, I remember having conversations with you about that core
Yes.
community group
Yeah.
and how we didn't want to make it. I mean, while it as a function it was localized,
Yeah.
and we didn't want to make it too local.
No,
did we?
no.
So it was a careful balance at that stage. But now we recognise that it's something that needs to.
Yeah, I mean the values of having people in the group who particularly had experience of what had happened in the past, and from the point of view of users to see what hadn't worked. Our member of the public, I think he's from Grove, Joyce, and I remember one of our members saying some months ago that when you live in Grove and you need to catch a bus for your night out, it can be as easy to go into Oxford as it is to go into Wantage, and it's changing. It was about changing that perception in that sort of local area. But yes, it has to go further, doesn't it? As people are Botley, it's easiest to get to.
As I said, though, it's like having gone down the Botley Road yesterday. Oh my goodness! I don't know if you've done it recently, but it's like a maze. You go back and forth and back and forth. So. Anyway, sorry.
My guess is this will be up to consultation before the Botley Road.
Yes, exactly.
Even if
I don't think anyone's going to take you on that.
Yeah.
Even if that's 2035.
Andy Crawford and I had some discussion about some of the detail in the report, and I'll just draw you to para 35, which is a sort of recommendation that there would be a review of fees that would go outside of the annularity that we normally do. I think I've got a bit of better clarity now on what that actually means. And I think our concern was, and sorry, officers, this isn't meant to be a stab at you, but that this would be done by officers, and that we would, as members, we wouldn't have any say. But the delegated authority fits within the Constitution, which says that there is consultation with members. So we would have the ability to comment on that. So I had said to Andy that perhaps I might think about trying to ask for a change of wording. I don't think there's a requirement because constitutionally a delegated authority requires members consultation anyway.
Yeah, so, I mean, I had this discussion with Phil yesterday, and yes, it would be as per the consultation. The point about this paragraph is if you're looking at commercial booking that doesn't naturally fit into the basic fee structure. For example, if someone comes along and wants to book a wedding, all weddings are not equal. So you need to have the scope to decide what's needed. We can offer this, we can offer this. So you don't have a standard fee.
Yeah.
I mean, likewise, commercial bookings, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
You want to be able to negotiate in a timescale that maybe not.
Yeah.
But in terms of the review, I mean, looking at fees and charges, review doesn't automatically mean increase, does it?
No, of course not. No.
So
I think.
But I think Phil could probably say more about it if you want. But that's basically the gist.
Well, I'm feeling much more comfortable with the way that that we will be included. And I think the point that you're making about sort of those things that are outside of the normal. You're hiring room A, and room A is £10 an hour, whatever it is. That's a fee. But if it's something that's bigger than that, then presumably possibly is not the right word, but it's a contractual agreement.
Absolutely.
So if you're going to go into contract with somebody, then we should have the flexibility. And if it's a small group that doesn't have very much money, then perhaps we'll give them a margin of room for manoeuvre. Whereas if it was a large national organisation that was trying to do it, then We say we've got loads of money and therefore we can charge them appropriately. So that's my understanding now of what we've got. And if Phil, if I've got that wrong, please say. And Andy Crawford, does that address the concerns that you and I talked about? So I'm not seeing it.
Yeah, sorry, you've given more clarity. You apologised to me earlier on as if I still had the finance portfolio, Mark, and I should point out that it's you now, mate.
Oh, is it? Oh, right. No, we're not spending any more money.
I've not said anything. I had hoped to ask our finance colleagues really a couple of questions, but as none of them are present, I can't do that. I guess what I would ask for is that as the strategy develops and as the various work stream develops, that we really ought to be asking finance to give some sort of confirmation that they're happy that the steps being taken will, in most likelihood, hit the ambition and the aim, as stated in the paper, of increasing our net revenue position, because that is, to my mind, one of the key ambitions of the whole point of this exercise, and it's important that they take that view. Adrian is going to tell me that they haven't. It's only because Simon's not here that he can't confirm that, and that's fine. But it would be nice to see something in the report, some sort of confirmation or assertion that they are happy that the direction of travel is going to narrow the deficit that the beacon currently has.
Adriana.
Thank you. It was one finance question I think I can answer, but I won't speak on Simon or Anna's behalf. What I will say is that there is a programme board in place that involves a number of officers that regularly monitor progress against the action plan. It's been in place for action plan 1 and will be in place for phase 2 as well. And finance are a member of that programme board, so they actively continue to monitor the progress financially that we're making, and at a future date we can get that response directly from Simon or Anna, but it'd be inappropriate for me to respond on their behalf in their absence. But they are part of the programme board.
Thank you, Adriana. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, I just had a slightly different angle on this. So, like others have said, I think that the work on the beacon has been fantastic, and there's been so much progress made in the last few years. So it's really impressive and really good to see. And right that we look at widening the appeal and encouraging more people to use that asset. That's all positive. Like Councillor Fawcett said, I've kind of got it's the bit about the strategy, the wider strategy, that I struggle with, having the beacon so prominent in it, rather than starting from a blank slate. But I also recognise what you've just said, Councillor Coleman, about sort of we are where we are, and also that Councillor Piggles has sort of confirmed, reassured that consultation that follows will be sort of wide and far-reaching and not make any kind of presumptions, you know, go out with an open mind kind of thing. That's really important. The other thing that I was thinking about is transparency. So the report's been a bit, we talked about whether they should be two different things or how it's presented, and it's caused a bit of confusion amongst us. And I was just thinking about, if we approve these recommendations today, that have we thought about the sort of communications about it to the public, to the decisions? Because if we're a bit confused about how it all fits together here, I think we need to be really clear about what we're saying and the messaging around it, because I wouldn't want people to read it and go, you know, from other parts of the Vale and say, oh, they're only focusing on the beacon. Do you know what I mean? I want to make sure that that we're really clear about what we're actually deciding on.
I think I jumped to probably Mark as an officer, but an officer to come in on that question. Both of you. Two. Excellent. Who wants to go first?
I'm volunteering Phil to go first because we have.
Yeah, he disappeared. Now it's you.
Just to confirm, we have preps and cons, but I'll let Phil talk about the detail of what that contains.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Yeah, no, we have been having conversations in relation to the messaging going out. We've been quite clear about the strategy and also the centre's role within that. And I think we've been quite positive in the press in terms of the public will be engaged with this. We are going to have a sector forum that will meet, and they will help in terms of building the strategy, but also they'll be part of the consultation when we've got an emerging strategy prior to us coming back to committee when the strategy is ready. So there will be a process in place to build the strategy, and the role of the centre within that will form part of that once we've gone through that initial consultation and engagement work. And we will keep messaging through that and talking to the sector and the wider public as we message through the process. So I think we're quite clear that strong messaging needs to go out, and we are building two things, one which is the programme and the centre, and the other one is the strategy itself.
And just to add to that, clearly through the consultation phase, we will be pushing it out as widely as we can to make sure that we get the widest public involvement in what they see for the future for the Beacon and the wider strategies of the councils.
Yeah. I was just going to say, as portfolio holder, I do expect you, Councillor Fawcett, to lead on
I
it.
need to be very careful in what I say. Yes, I will be attempting to give a very clear steer on the importance of separating out what we're doing on the Beacon and the wider strategy, which I think from the public perception is much better treated as two separate things.
Yeah. Councillor Coleman?
My points go on.
Oh, sorry.
Can you carry on and I'll come back to me. Sorry, no, I've got it. Yeah, sorry, I have got it. So I've got it. So I heard it mentioned at least once about deficit of the Beacon. If I read that into it, well, it's not making a profit. Let's be blunt about it. It doesn't make a profit. And we received an email from a member who voiced a concern over that as well, that it costs money. So I view this slightly differently, to say this is funding isn't necessarily about maintaining a building. It's about the provision of a service, and provided that we have that strategy that widens it out, then part of the consultation should be: do we, as a Vale District Council, believe that we should be, or do the residents believe that we should be providing arts and cultural services, which, and I've been told, I've not checked it, there isn't an arts centre anywhere in the country that breaks even. It costs money. Now, some of that comes from grants, which is great because it's not our money, but it does cost money to deliver the service. And I think that's probably fits into the sort of breaking out the Beacon, and if there is a cost delivering the service and we think that cost is worthwhile, bearing in mind that it arguably as a finance guy, thanks for reminding me, Andy, is discretionary. We can choose whether we do this. We can't choose whether we collect the waste bins. So if we think it's a good thing to do and the residents agree that it's a good thing to do, then we have to decide, well, how much money are we willing to pay to do it? And that's all the bit that I think should come out of the strategy and should be consulted on.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I'm glad you remember.
Yeah, me too. It's an age thing.
Any further comments?
Well, I'm happy to support the recommendations as they are. I think some of what I've heard has been reassuring. I still think we've got a bit of work to do to be absolutely clear what our objectives are from the wider strategy. But reading the recommendations, they allow for that to then happen. But I do think we do need to clarify, and particularly where the line is between the Beacon, the ongoing development of the Beacon as a venue, and the rest of the district. And picking up on Mark's point, it is about if we decide that we think spending on arts and cultural heritage is a good thing for the district council to do, we need to decide how much. But it's also how do we get the most engagement and development across the district from that one.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is where the question comes: to what extent is one venue in the mix? So, but we've got. I'll support the recommendations on the basis that we've still got time to discuss some of the detail.
I'm really reassured by, sorry for cutting in, but really reassured by some of the suggestions to broaden it and include other organisations, other facilities, whether they be council owned or not, to make sure that while we may not have the ability to fund them ourselves, we are using the resources and the support that we can offer to regenerate and boost these organisations. Now, I think without a strategy, we would not be able to do that. And that is why it is a wider arts and culture, so I don't get it right, but you know what I mean. It's the wider strategy in which the beacon sits. And the beacon sits there because we are where we are. We have this. We are, I think I can see it almost as a caretaker role until we have a clearer idea about where we're going with local government reorganisation. Until that point, I think it's in our behest that we make sure that we look after it and improve it to the level that we can hand it over in whatever capacity to it in its best light, and working hopefully even better than it is now, given that we've put this, and we officers have put all of this action in place to make sure that we do see the improvement that we do. So I think it is, it is a wider strategy. It is allowing for us to support museums and cultural centres right across the district. And the beacon is only part of it, I think. That's how I see it anyway. So if we can wrap it up for a one item cabinet paper cabinet meeting, we've had some very good discussions, so I appreciate that. It's important to get this right. So would you like me to go through the recommendations?
Yes, please.
So we're happy to go to the recommendations. Thank you. So the recommendations, we have 3 recommendations before us today. So A, that Cabinet approve the closure of the action plan phase 1, the beacon, and note the positive progress made on delivering the action plan phase 1, the beacon. B, that Cabinet approves the action plan phase 2, culture and the beacon, as detailed in Appendix 1, noting that it includes broader cultural issues and the beacon's art centre, as well as the beacon art. And C, that Cabinet note pathway to deliver culture, heritage and creative industry strategy 2026-2030, which will be brought back to Cabinet following wider public consultation in summer 2026. Are we all agree?
You need to propose
Yeah,
it.
sorry. I would like to propose it. Who's second? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Pickles. So all agreed? Thank you. So no further business today. So I'd like to call the meeting to a close at 11:15. Thank you very much for everybody attending in person and online. Thank you.
Have a good weekend all. Cheers.
Thank you.